HW here. H to the ISO. B to double to the... I'm still writing that one. Dudes, today I want to talk about three brand new modelers I think we just might see at NAMM. I have higher conviction in some of these, lower conviction in some of the other ones. Before I go any further, let me say this. What I can tell you without violating any NDAs is there's at least 2 brand new units that I have in my email right now that I can't tell you about. I'm not going to talk about them in this video, but what do we know is already coming out? Vailton has some new stuff. Valiton, however you say that. They're expanding their GP5 and the GP200 line to basically take the GP5 and make it bigger and add some functionality and stuff there. I think they're doing the GP150 and the GP100. I can't remember, 120. Anyway, 180 or something. There's some cool stuff there. That is a new modeler with capture tech in terms of, it's the snap technology they've got or whatever. So they basically got their own capture tech, but you can also take Neural Ant Modeler and convert it to their own, which is very cool. And I know Neural is working on that. Neural Ant Modeler, NAMM, is working on that. Neural, we're going to talk about Neural and the new QC hardware that's coming. But NAMM also, I'll just tell you, I think there's new stuff coming that's going to utilize Neural Ant Modeler. Let's get into the 3 new ones, though, that we don't know anything about and that I can talk about. First up, I said in my last video I didn't think QC was going to release any hardware. Boy, was I wrong. They're already hinting at stuff. Might look like this. Maybe it's a bigger Quad Cortex, maybe it's something, but they're putting up soon posts. They put up a post where there was clearly like a light up screen or something. So I'm really not sure what they're doing. Could this not be new hardware? Could it just be, hey guys, we've now ported over all of the plugins to now work on the Quad Cortex? Maybe they're going to dump everything where it's just like Mayor works, all the stuff works, all the stuff that isn't currently in that X form. Maybe they've caught up and it all works, so they're just dumping it all. They're like, you can now take anything. Maybe you can buy it directly on the Quad Cortex now, just right there. There'll be like a store inside. Who knows what they're going to do? But it looks like they're hinting at new hardware. Are we going to see a brand new Quad Cortex with maybe the ability to do even more captures and stuff? Here's why I think this makes sense. Have you noticed that the new V2 captures actually eat up a good amount of DSP? I'm noticing because the way I send out QC captures that I sell is I put together a preset and place a bunch of QC captures on each line, then send you the preset file, and then they're bundled together, and so you get like, oh, here's 12 tones, but Tone Junkie only had to send you 1 preset, right? So it's less button clicks for me. What I noticed though is these QC V2s, they're eating up a lot more memory. They're harder to run. They are basically, I can only put 3 on a line. So if you're someone who wants to run a V2 on one side and a V2 on the other, you really quickly are running out of DSP when you start adding in a couple reverbs or something. When you start putting in a delay and a verb, it gets actually really difficult to put in 2 side-by-side V2s and all the stuff you might want. So I actually think this makes a lot of sense that QC would be releasing maybe a QC XL or a QC Plus or just I think what we might be looking at is a something like a Octortex. Is that a thing? Octortex, 8 quads, or 8 cores, where instead of 4. What if we do double? What if we're doubling the Quad Cortex, right? So what if it's the Oct Cortex? I mean, that I think is realistically something that they could build and people would be into, especially with these new V2 captures. And I know I would be into that, and I don't know really what other features they've built in. Maybe a slightly snappier, quicker display or something. I don't know. I haven't felt like it needs upgrading, but maybe. Here's another thing that I think is coming. This one has to be coming. Tonex floor. These guys have to be working on something. They just have to be working on something. Look, they've got Amplitude. They have a full suite of effects built in the software form. This whole Tonex thing started out as software to capture your amp. A lot of people were telling me about it. Have you tried Tonex? Have you tried Tonex? I'm like, what is this? Why would I want to try Tonex? I'm not really into just software. I feel like you need hardware to take it around. Boom, I did a video. I actually predicted the Tonex pedal because about a week or two before it released, because I just saw IK had hardware pedals. They had this software that did this. They had taken their software and put it into a pedal. They're probably going to do it again with Tonex. They did it. I ended up getting calls later that day. First of all, I got an email that said, "Who told you?" I said, "Nobody told me, I guess." And then I got a call later that day from a store in town, Vintage King, that said, "Hey, we actually have one. Do you want to come check it out?" You kind of guessed correctly. So that was cool. That was awesome. I had a lot of fun there, and got to meet the IK guys through that whole experience. And now I've been able to showcase a lot of their products, and I love their products. To me, I'm looking at this going, we're in the same situation again. You have everything done on the software side. You've already been making hardware that takes your software capability and puts it into hardware. You guys have to be doing something else. I really think that Tonex, I'm going to be careful how I say this. I think Tonex has a layup on their hands, and there's a couple ways you could botch it. But if Tonex comes to market and their effects and selection of effects are only 80% of the way there, meaning if they don't quite have as many effects as Helix or Fractal, and the quality is even a little bit less, I think actually it's a home run product still. I really do. And I'll tell you why. I look at the Helix all these years later. There are still so many dedicated Helix users who are just 100% happy with the Helix effects. And there are those of us who have constantly said, and I've heard this from a lot of the worship guys, that the verbs are just the weak spot, right? All the units have like a weak spot, right? For Kemper, it's like, oh, the usability and it looks like an old unit and stuff like that. But I would say the reverbs are some of the best out there. A lot of times people say Fractal has the best effects out there. I would take the delays and reverbs in the Kemper over any unit. That's just me personally. Line 6 has so many great effects, so many great ones. Fractal has so many great ones. Where I think there is some room for improvement with a company like Line 6 would be on some of those verbs. And I think it's something they can do now that the stadium's out and there's even more DSP available. I think that's what we're going to see, by the way. That's going to happen soon. But I'm just guessing. But that leads me to go, okay, there are units on the market where, in general, I find that the general opinion of players out there is, if there's a weakness in the Helix, right? It was kind of maybe the cabs. They did the new V2 cabs. That kind of solved it. You can always put IRs, right? But in general, people go, I kind of like the verbs better in this other thing. I never really hear anyone go, oh my gosh, Fractal has trash verbs, Helix is better. I never hear that. So it seems to be one of those things where it's like, it's more specialized. Sometimes you'll lose a player who's really, really into the big verbs. Now, most players are not into the big verbs, and there are big verbs in the Helix, and they sound fine. They sound good. I think they just take a little more manipulation to get them quite where you want to be. And maybe even then, you're just getting very, very close. That leads me to believe the market will sort of tolerate, having a little something missing if you've solved another big problem. Guitar players are used to making effects just work, right? You might want a little more or a little more of this, or I wish it did this, but we're used to approximating with our pedals and the tools we have. So I really, really think Tonex has everything they need to make a home run product, right? At least a ground rule double product, right? A ground rule double that they could improve upon later, because you can always iterate and change things around. And I think if you really, really just do your homework, you can figure out how to make things sound really exceptional and not be held back by DSP, a la the Kemper, which the verbs in that thing are just crazy considering how old it is, So I'll just say Tonex, if it's not coming this NAMM, it's got to be in the works. And last but not least, this one I think I'm least confident we're going to see this, but it is possible. Imagine an HX Stomp Stadium. Imagine it. I'd buy it. Sounds cool. I'd be into it. I'm not sure we're going to see this at NAMM. I have some real doubts about it. I talked about this in my last video where I just said I think they released the Stadium. They just released the Stadium XL and then the Stadium even more recently. That Stadium seems to be the size that you would put on a pedal board if you want to run effects, kind of like the Quad Cortex, which is kind of in that sweet spot of like, it's big enough to be a all-in-one, small enough to put on some on a pedal board with some other effects. I think the Stadium is kind of targeting that size too, where you could have it as an all-in-one, but this is small enough you really can integrate it on a larger pedal board just fine, and you'll have a pretty killer setup. And if you want to just add 2 or 3 effects, you're gonna actually it's gonna be pretty easy to do that. This one, though, I think would be just one of the craziest bestsellers. And here's what I would like to see in an HX Stomp Stadium. I think there's a lot of people who want effects, right? And I get that they want effects. But right now, all the effects in the Helix are the same as the Helix OG and the Helix LT and the Helix Stadium and all this stuff, right? The effects are all the same. So there's really not a point in putting out another small unit for people who want effects. That unit already exists. The only thing you could really do would be add on new effects that maybe they're going to make only for Stadium, which they haven't done that yet. So I don't know if that's even in the plan. Or you could do a lot of effects that more effects or something. I'm not sure. You could have like as much DSP as a Helix in a little in a HX Stomp. I don't even think there's really a market for that because I think there is such a thing as HX effects, and you can run more effects. So I think the only way that we're going to see a product like this is if really it's a Tonex competitor, and that is it takes whatever they're going to end up doing with proxy, which we haven't really heard anything about yet. If it takes something we're doing with proxy and we end up, getting a type of amp-only modeler kind of thing, and maybe it's called Stadium amps, maybe it's called HX amps, and they could put all the amps in there, including the Agora, including whatever they end up doing with proxy stuff, whenever that's out, maybe we get, a pedal that could do that too. I don't know. Are we going to need, all the other functionality in a small box? I don't think so. Is it going to appeal to people who primarily want to use effects? No, because it's going to be more expensive than the HX Stomp, and there already is an HX Stomp. So I kind of feel like the way Line 6 is playing all this is, if you want the effects, the HX Stomp is still out there. It's still a great pedal. It's still a great buy. It lives on this little board down here for me. It's kind of that, the HX Stomp is like one of the best pedals ever created because it's like want the DL4 and all the stuff you used to buy all in one? Yes. Want the new stuff all in one? Yes. You just can't do it all at once. And you kind of can with like snapshots. You can build in rigs on a little more simplistic side and use as an all-in-one. People have proven that. But what is the HX Stomp Stadium going to be? This is the one I'm the least convicted about. I don't think it's coming out this year, but I think there's a real product here for HX Stomp Stadium to be mostly an amp-focused type of thing. Because again, that's what Tonex is doing. You know what I mean? That's what Nano Cortex is doing. So you know what I'm saying? Like limited effects, mostly just the amp tones in a smaller package. Line 6 doesn't have anything like that right now. And maybe they will one day, and maybe that'll be this product. I'm excited to see what they do nonetheless. Those are 3 modelers we might just see at NAMM in 2026. I've been HW.